I'm going to read a story from Crazy Cab Stories Volume 2. The story is called Temperature Rising by Hannah McCormack, age 11. Pulsing red lights, bustling doctors, and a metal bed frame. This is what Toby Anderson saw when he opened his eyes. Although it hurt to think or exert himself, Toby could formulate one word in his scattered mind. Hospital. Then his burning forehead pushed its way to the front of his thoughts once more, and Toby succumbed to unconsciousness. Awakening again, perhaps an hour or a week later, Toby saw something that was out of place with the orderly hospital environment. A large figure, masked by the shadows. His exceptionally high temperature threatening to sedate him once more, Toby fought to stay awake out of curiosity. He had good reason to be curious, since there was something bizarre in his ward. And then that bizarre thing stepped into the light, and Toby saw what it was. There, looking almost comically out of place beside the beeping machinery, was a creature. Although it stood on two legs like a person, the resemblance stopped there. Pale, ice-blue fur hung from its body like shaggy icicles, with darker blue fur surrounding a small but strangely kind-looking face. It had strong, muscular legs that ended in padded paws and long bear-like arms. The hands, although similar to a person's, had one finger that was significantly longer than the rest. Its face, with a navy nose similarly shaped to a dog's, had eyes that looked like they were human, and were staring straight into Toby's emerald green ones. Now convinced that he was hallucinating, it had happened before unless there really were turtles at the foot of his bed, Toby stopped fighting his fever and the tendrils of sleep that pulled at him, and closed his eyes. That's when he felt it. The unusually long and cool finger on his forehead banishing the burning sensation and soothing everything in Toby's body. Feeling refreshed and invigorated, Toby's eyes snapped open. He thought for a moment he saw the lingering stare of those frost-coloured eyes, but then he blinked and saw only the empty ward and the snow-capped mountain shadow through the windows. Miracle. Unbelievable. These are the words that surrounded Toby as medical experts examined him and nurses stared incredulously at the robust boy, who only a week ago had a temperature so high it broke records. Eventually, Toby got discharged and went back to normal, but he could not shake the feeling that the creature had been real, and he kept thinking he saw it in various places. But he dismissed this as foolish thoughts until it was impossible to ignore. Up on the mountains is where Toby saw it for the first definite time since he was in hospital. Their eyes locked for a moment, and an unexplainable feeling passed through Toby. He now knew for certain that it was real. The creature beckoned with an abnormally long finger, and, like a dream, Toby obeyed. He followed the furry shape up into the peaks of the mountains, noticing that he hardly felt the cold. Eventually they came to a stop in a small cave nestled between hills of snow, and Toby voiced the question that was on his mind. What are you? The creature looked at Toby and in a gruff voice replied, I am Scarp the Howlbraider. Obviously understanding Toby's puzzlement, Scarp continued in a voice that sounded like an ice glacier cracking to tell his story. Howlbraiders have been around for centuries. We are healers for children who need it. Once we heal a child, we stay with them for life and protect them. So you and I now have an unbreakable bond, and I will help you change the world. I selected you as soon as I saw you in that ward, for I could see that you will make a difference in your adult years. Toby stood, drinking all this information in. He was speechless, his green eyes opened wide in awe. What happens now? He asked, leaning into the blue fur as a gust of wind slapped them with icy fingers. We enjoy ourselves, Scarp quipped, twisting his muzzle in what Toby took for a smile. And they did. Toby snuck out to meet Scarp in freezing places like the ice rink or the foot of the mountains. There they played, talked, and built a bond that they believed was unbreakable, but nothing lasts forever. Toby soon found that he was going higher and higher into the mountains to find Scarp, and noticed that his friend seemed uncomfortable in his hot, thick fur. The news always protested about a warming climate, and Toby began to worry. One day he could hold it no longer and asked Scarp what was wrong. Toby, Scarp started, surely the climate change situation has not escaped your keen eye. Surely you know what's wrong. My fellow Howlbraiders have moved further north, but I cannot leave you, not without your say-so. The heat is too much for me here. Both pairs of eyes filled with tears. Suddenly, everything Toby had teetered on in the decision. "Go," whispered Toby, breaking the silence. "This is how you will help me change the world." He kissed the soft blue muzzle, felt the finger on his face, and turned away. When he looked back, Scarp was gone. Years later, a taxi drew up, a rare sight these days because most cars were banned to stop air pollution. A man with emerald green eyes stepped out of the cab and began the treacherous climb up the slope. Although he had not been to the mountain in years, his feet remembered the way. From the cave he watched some of the snow melt, wondering about a solution to this problem. When he came back down, he attended a meeting with other leading scientists. Dr. Toby Anderson's plan began to have an impact, and it was all driven by his hope that Scarp would be able to live on the mountain once more. Eventually, the world took heed of the message and began changing its destructive ways. In the end, Scarp did help Toby change the world for the better.